Now, A Rainbow's Tale isn't quite as nice as the story we knew of sugar and spice. There's long been rumors as to how exactly rainbows are made in Equestria. While a great amount of Pegasi ponies are employed in the rainbow department of the Weather Factory, almost all of them do the low-end work. That's what's known as the Great Stream of Spectra. The individual colors of the rainbow flow through a large grates and into the vast vats. From there, workers carefully and equally mix the spectra into the colligated rainbow pools that dot around and run through the factories surrounding the city. The next, that mixture is pumped onto the floor below, where other employees atomize it and store it until active weather Pegasi deploy it in the field. However, no one knows how the individual spectra is made. Supplies are never seen being brought in, leaving not even a clue of what goes on into a rainbow. Tourists, when visiting the factory, are treated to an extremely foreboding and plain wall with massive solid doors bearing entry to any pony at any time. While most of the facilities' various signs and architectures is bubbly and welcoming, the Rainbow Factory's upper floor was protected by harsh imagery of potential biohazards and death, and the cloud of wall was not made out of clean white of the rest of the city, but a black, quietly thundering fog. To become an employee of the Upper Rainbow Factory meant sacrificing any life outside of those black walls. Workers are sworn to secrecy and forbidden from leaving, and live inside the factory itself. Those few who never managed to make it out, not a body bag was twisted and disturbed, too damaged to even ever bring themselves in to talk about it. A lot of the Furies were proposed: dark magic from captured unicorns, chemicals and environmental hazards that no sane pony would tolerate, and even thoughts of an unknown sister of Celestia's, destined to create the spectra of instead of raising the sun or the moon. None of them could be farther than the truth, but a rainbow's easy once you get to know it with the help of the magic of a Pegasus device. "Come on, Orin, we're going to be late for our final test," Scootaloo called out to her friends of hers. She was older now, in her last year of flight school. She, like all other Pegasus in the school, was terribly nervous about the final test. Those that passed were granted freedom into the world to find their cutie marks if they haven't yet, and become working ponies. Little is known, or at least little thought about the fact, was what have happened to the fillies that failed their test. While uncommon, one or two from every class generally didn't have them in it to perform rigorous acts and maneuvers. Those that failed their tests were booked down upon the worst ways, shunned and hated. Cloudsdale had always bred a form of nationalism amongst its occupants. If you weren't the best or didn't show the potential of being the greatest, you weren't allowed to be a part of the glorious collective. Scootaloo moved a little to the side as Orin, a tall yet very skinny pony, settled next to her. He fluffed his light brown feathers and gave a worried attempt at a smile as he stared around where he sat. They were sitting in a large open waiting room overlooking the Colosseum, with all the other graduating Pegasi. Just visible in the distance was the factory. Orin glanced at it and gulped. "What's the matter, Orin? You afraid of getting the dead-end job on this snow line?" Orin chuckled a bit, but his eyes closed inside. "No, it's just... I don't know. I don't think I can do this. What if I fail? What if I don't fail? But if I do just bad stuff enough to be disliked by everyone, I don't know if I can handle being deported. Where do we even go anyways?" Scootaloo gave Orin a friendly punch. "No one knows, you dolt, and we're not going to fail. Everyone here is going to be fine. I know I will at least pass." She laughed. "Thanks to the tips from Rainbow Dash, I'm sure to be fine." "Oh yeah, sure. That reassures me. That's actually just as, if not even more reassuring than the psychopathic hate every pony here seems to have to spread. Quit panicking, scaredy wings, Scootaloo replied. The only one here I think might fail is that yellow pony with a dark green mane. She's the one who was out sick for that month, you know. Oh yeah, Orin remembered, as he craned his head in the other pony's direction. The one that had bad case of hoof and wing. She looks pretty confident, though. Well, I suppose we'll see, Scootaloo trailed, turning back to look at the factory herself. It gave her the chills, not of fear, but of pride. I hope I get some cool active weather job. Can you imagine? Everyone in Ponyville or Philadelphia staring at me going to, there goes Scootaloo. Such an amazing flyer, and from Cloudsdale. There could be no doubt. She smiled in excitement, forgetting her tension for the moment. That would be something, I'll admit. Mind you, it's just coming from Cloudsdale. Who wouldn't be in awe? Exactly. Paradise the flock. Praise the flock. Places, every pony. A massive buff Pegasus walked towards the entrance of the Colosseum. We're going to do this by name. Your adjudicators are at the east side of the field. Do not, I repeat, do not fly too far west. If they lose sight of you for any reason, you'll be failed. Immediately, take deep breaths, stretch your wings one time. The tests will consist of 3 sections: weather clearing, agility, and finally recovery. Clear the clouds, fly it through the hoops, and then fly it at the market evaluation. Close your wings for at least 3 seconds. Any less and you'll fail. But you keep in mind that there's no extra points for extra seconds. Finally recover before you hit the cloud floor. Understood? Any questions? The instructor paused and carefully glanced at every single pony of the room. Everyone's eyes were completely focused on him, and none were creased with confusion. All right, AuroraDawn, you're up first. Clear, fly, fall complete. The yellow pony nodded and walked quickly up to the starting ramp with purpose. She stared at the judging, watching. Jane waited for a nod from all 3, then took off with a powerful force. The ramp bounced slightly from the force of the offtake. Every pony watched as Aurora quickly reached with the startling altitude, and then began with a directed, purposeful attack on the positioned clouds. With expert timing and intelligent angles, the sky was soon empty of any moisture. Scootaloo and Orin watched with open mouths as they watched the first testee pull a fast and tight turns, expertly shooting dead center through each and every hoop. Finally, Aurora pulled herself up to proper altitude and hoovered and closed her wings. The group of students gasped as she started plummeting down towards the clouds and counted breathlessly. 1, 2, 3. They sighed as they watched her wings open in the correct amount of time, collectively holding that relief. Suddenly, Aurora's wings whipped upwards, and the group of students flinched in horror as they all heard the loud, hollow snap, only to be suddenly replaced with an unending, piercing scream. Many, like Orin, shielded their eyes with their wings, but as others like Scootaloo could only watch, terrified as a blur of yellow, green, and red plummeted to a cloud with a dull thump. Wasting no time, the instructor walked forwards again as the 3 judges simply pointed down and stared at the shuffling papers around. Speaking loudly as if nothing had happened, he called out again, "Daisy Fields, clear, fly, fall, complete." Scootaloo and Orin just stared back slack-jawed as another pony gulped. They then walked towards the path and took off. They took back to the tuff on the cloud where Aurora landed and started. As the wind blew the fragments that were thrown up from the collision away, they saw the shivering yellow body attempt to move, only collapse with a cry. "Faraday Sports, clear, fly, and complete." Aurora still struggled to walk, wailing with every step. Her legs weren't broken. She could use them fine, but it was obvious the pain was from her wing joints, and the loss of her potential life was crushing her. Scootaloo felt Orin shuffled uneasily, tears welling in his eyes as a frown formed on his face. "Holiday shine, clear, fly, fall, complete." "No one's coming to help her." Orin seethed through the closed teeth. Scootaloo felt extremely sad for the yellow Pegasus, but couldn't see herself helping her. She would be failed herself and sent away, far away from Cloudsdale and from any familiar place on Equestria. to a place where she and any other failed students could never stain Cloudsdale's reputation. It was a terrible shame, but Scootaloo couldn't fail herself. She couldn't fail her friends, and she definitely couldn't fail Rainbow Dash. Not after the care and help she had given her Scootaloo's whole life. Scootaloo blinked with the tears from her eyes and forced herself to watch the competing students. One after one took off, successfully passed the test, and flew to the east gate, under the judge's spot in the stands. That's all Scootaloo focused on. Pass the test, fly to the gate, live a happy life. Orin, Solstice, clear, fly, fall, complete. No. What? The instructor took a deep step back, one leg raised in the air. You can't just refuse your flight test. Get out of there before you piss the judges off. No, don't even pretend that you care about my future. If you don't care about hers. Orin defied, unsure about himself. You say you want me to get a good life, and yet you let those that fail suffer unbearable pain? Get the fuck onto that field before I fail you myself, the instructor shouted menacingly. Fine, Orin spoke sharply, before walking down the ramp. He stared at the judges, waited for the individual nods, and then the second they came, he took off. However long before starting the altitude, he turned sharply and landed gently next to Aurora. She turned and looked at him, blood running down her forehead and sides. Tears streamed down her face. What are you doing? You'll fail like me. You'll be exiled. I'd rather be exiled from a place that treats ponies like this than live my life while others don't live theirs. Aurora smiled, happiness briefly replacing her sadness in the blackened, puffy eyes, until she stumbled again, and intense pain flashed across her body. Orin leaned in close, using his wing to brace the yellow pony against himself. He stared up at the judges, beaming hate with his vision. They stared down, unaffected, and simply pointed down before looking back towards the ramp for the next contestant. Scootaloo stood shocked, hardly hearing her name being called. She moved numbly up the ramp, never taking her eyes off of her friend and the pony who sacrificed himself to help. After a brief moment, she shook her head, recovered her thoughts, and looked to the judges. Thoughts passed through her head as she watched them all nod. Oh, Celestia, what do? I can't let anyone I know down, but I'll never see Orin again, I suppose. I hope he knows that risk when he did that. I'm sure he's thinking the same right now. She glanced at Orin. He wasn't looking at her. He took off heartbroken. Instinct kicked in as familiar rush of wind cooled her and blew her thoughts away. She stopped at the right altitude and then launched again, sensing this, seeing every cloud, formulating a game plan. In the matter of a couple of dozen seconds, the sky was clear. She did a quick loop in mid-flight, aiming for the first hot hoop. In the first powerful flash of her wings, she propelled her forward through the first ring, and then for the second, and then the third, expertly turning and drifting. She curved in towards the second last ring, near the bottom out of the field. As she descended, she caught a sight of Orin and Aurora, almost at the west gate now. Orin turned his head and smiled weakly. Scootaloo's focus shattered. Orin knew that what he did. He cared about her. He missed her, and he never get to say goodbye. Scootaloo cranked to the bottom of the part of the ring, falling backwards several feet and hitting the ground. With a sudden tense of flash fear, she flipped herself onto her feet and began flapping her wings, levitating off the ground. Maybe that didn't count as a failure, she thought. I could still fly. There was distraction on the field. She spun around to the judges. Three hooves pointed down. Scootaloo started crying there, tears welling up and blurring her vision. This wasn't right. This couldn't have happened. None of it. Orin should have passed the test and cheered her on from the east gate. She shouldn't have looked at him. She shouldn't have focused on flying. But there was no room for excuses. Defeated, she slowly hoovered over towards Orin and settled down next to him. She looked at him with her purple eyes. He looked back, offering a smile. You did a good job. Scootaloo dropped her head and sobbed. Then she walked around Orin, lifted a wing of her own, and helped Aurora walk to the west gate. Before them stood a long, unlit hall, with only a cheap sign stuck to the wall, notifying test failies to proceed down the hall. They waited only briefly to gather themselves and prepare for where they would be taken, and all stepped forward together. Let's delve deeper into the rainbow philosophy, far beyond of that Cloudsdale's mythology. It's easy to misjudge that floating city with all alluring decor and social psychology. Against an empty carriage at the end of the lonely hall were three imposing ponies leaning disinterested and bored pose. One of them happened to look up at the sorry-looking trio stumbled out into the open. They were on the bottom edge of the Colosseum, the vast rolling hills and plains of Equestria visible far below. "Hey boss, we got some dem worthless Pegasuses." The first one called even a bigger pony on the side of the carriage. "I suppose it's a get-to-work time, is it?" "Cool, hotshot. There may be more too." No, I was the last student to go," Scootaloo spoke in sobs. Orin could only hung his head. It's... She paused and breathed deeply, determined to remain as strong as she could. "It's just us three. Aurora's wings. They're broken. She needs help." "Ain't that just crying shame?" "It is. What is it to us? All the better she don't come flying back to us no more." "We may have failed our damn test, but that doesn't mean we're not worth keeping alive," Scootaloo shouted in a fit of rage. She was determined to hold on to as much dignity as she could. All right, sheesh. Hey, Patches, doctor her up before we head out. I don't want any blood on them seats. I just washed that thing. You oughta too in the cart." Orin and Scootaloo hopped into the carriage and got comfortable as they could on the hard seats. They made sure to leave the room for Aurora. As soon as the third of the large ponies finished bandaging her wings, Aurora carefully stepped onto the vehicle and lay down at the bench on her back. Scootaloo inched closer to her and leaned down to talk to her as the door to the carriage slammed shut. The boss pony was inside the back, standing by the door, watching each of them. "So," Scootaloo began quietly, trying not to speak too loud, "you're Aurora. I'm Scootaloo. I'm sorry we had to meet like this." "Any meeting of a friend is a welcome meeting," Aurora spoke gently, with sincerity in her eyes. "We did our best, that's all we can say. That's all any of us can say. Who's to say that the city of Deported isn't a good one? Anyways," the thought struck Scootaloo as she considered it. No one was ever told about where the Pegasi were brought. Most ponies considered it to be some odd land, like where the zebras hailed from. That made Scootaloo realize something even more profound. Hey, if where we're taken is where Zecora comes from, then there's gotta be a way to get back. It's not as if we're banned from Equestria. Fluttershy, an old friend of mine, she's a Pegasus who lives in Ponyville. She's never passed flight school and she never took her test. They never come and taken her away. Exactly, Aurora agreed with a nod. Orin overheard and offered his thoughts. "I think the reason we're sent far away is because no pony from Cloudsdale wants to admit that someone who failed flight school could come from the city. What a fucking horrible place. Now that I think of it, I never want to go back." "Maybe that's why no Pegasus ever comes back. They just don't like Cloudsdale." "Your goddamn worthless ponies can hardly call yourselves Pegasus." Boss spoke from the door. He was swaying ever so slightly as the carriage was lifted and moved to an unknown location. "Useless failures is what you are. No pony comes back from exile, regardless of reason. You can't pass your goddamn test? You three make me sick." Scootaloo jumped out from her seat, lifted herself in the air with her wings, and dove past first at the boss. "You shut the hell up about us. You have no right to treat others like this." Boss raised a hoof and backhanded Scootaloo out in the air onto the floor. "I could treat you however I want. You hardly classify as ponies to Cloudsdale, or of any Equestria for that matter. Now sit the fuck down and shut up, or until you get your destination." "Where are we being taken anyways? Not like we could tell anyone now. I'm sure as the deliverers, you guys should know," Orin cautiously reasoned. "Hell if I know. We had this carriage off to ponies in suits, and we get a bag full of coins to keep quiet about the whole thing. It's always how it's been for 1,000 years." Three fillies huddled together again, scared of the unknown. They kept quiet as they waded through the unbearable trip, all lost in their own thoughts, friends, family, loved ones, and pets. All will never see them again, and some would never find out why. An hour passed, and then another. Finally, an uncomfortable quiet was broken by a lurch as the carriage stopped in its flight. "Ah," Boss smiled. "There's my stop. You ponies play nice now. Have fun in wherever hell you're sent to." The carriage door shuffled open, and Boss hopped out with a gust of cold wind. It was dark outside, with hardly any light at all to see. Scootaloo stared outside and noticed another figure starting in. It was dressed in black suits, its tail dyed an unnatural black that never occurred in nature. Its face was covered by dark, loose-fitting mask, concealing its mane. All that was visible with rose-colored eyes, staring indifferently at the three ponies inside. They stopped on Scootaloo momentarily, unrecognizing, but she stared back. A second passed, the dark ponies slammed the door shut, and the carriage took off once again. "At least we can talk now," Aurora whispered in the dark, but they had nothing to talk about. But with all great things comes with great responsibility, with Cloudsdale being weather stability. The three desolated foals blinked in their eyes awake, having all resolved to conserve energy for whatever comes next. With a loud scraping noise, the doors shook and then swung wide open. Several more ponies, obscured by masks and suits, were moving around the area. Scootaloo blinked against the light from where she was seeing. They were all in a cloud building. As her eyes adjusted, she noticed some details. Several of the blackened ponies were rushing around, some holding clipboards, some carrying briefcases, and other important-looking items on their backs. The complex was full of machinery and signs. Pipes ran along the ceiling, with a loud whir ran in the background, occasionally joined with the industrial sounds such as crashes and alarms. Scootaloo gasped. "This place, the architecture, it's all so familiar. I think we're in the weather factory." Orin frowned. "That can't be right. We're traveling for far too long. We got to be far away from Equestria now, not to mention the city." "Actually, Scootaloo may be right," Aurora mused. "I noticed it was maybe the same amount of time, but when we left the Coliseum to the place the carriage drivers swapped, that was when the swap place to here. But I don't know, I'm confused. Maybe it's just a coincidence." "Welcome, mules," a large and powerful voice commanded. Several of the suited ponies moved to make way for a deep, dark red Pegasus, dressed in a white lab coat. "You degenerates are probably wondering where exactly you are. Stupid fillies, you're in Cloudsdale, the Rainbow facility to be exact. Allow me to show you around." "What's going on here? Do you expect all of us to see us as slaves? Because I'd rather be deported, thanks," Scootaloo yelled. Orin and Aurora got off their seats and stood behind Scootaloo, nodding in agreement. "Like you failures have a choice. You'll be here for the rest of your lives. Oh, I'm sorry. Where are my manners? I am Dr. Atmosphere. My degree isn't a medical one. I shall reassure you in case you're picturing some dreadful surgery going on behind the scenes. Strange on how many worthless Pegasi get the idea. No, my degree is in engineering. I am one of the 4 colts in this facility, and I'm sure you've all had the tour of the lower factory, no?" The 3 ponies nodded slowly, unsure of what was going on. "Excellent. Who can tell me where the tour begins?" Orin spoke up first. "Where the spectra comes up from upstairs and it's mixed." "Very good. What pity you're utterly useless to the flock. You could have been smart one too." Dr. Atmosphere smiled sadistically and patted Orin on the head. "But today you're on the upper floor. Please follow me and don't go too far behind, or one of my helpers will be forced to encourage you." With that, he winked at the suited ponies. With nods, they all 3 of them at the rear end leaned forward and jabbed each of the Pegasi with tasers, shocking them to the ground. Dr. Atmosphere whined in laughter as they all yelped in fall, and continued with a soft chuckle as they stood up again. Scootaloo blinked more tears from her eyes and shook herself again, trying to lose the tingling in her nerves. She turned and quickly looked at each of the suited ponies, catching each of them in the eye when she could. None of them were rose-eyed ponies from the carriage. Begrudgingly, she started to walk behind the red engineer. "You simply must be careful in this department," Dr. Atmosphere began, in a tone not unlike the many other tour guides in the lower floors. "There's plenty of nooks and crannies and vents and vats one could fall into. One must be careful not to hurt themselves. After all, you're all hopeless as it is. Any more so, and even we couldn't use you." He glanced behind him maliciously as the Free Fools frowned insult. They were walking down the series of halls with vibrating machines and assembly lines lining the way, occasionally ducking under low-hanging wires or carefully stepping over steaming pipes. As they walked through, the building became cooler and cooler. All three were watching, sensing, looking for a way out. They couldn't see any. "Now let me tell you a story. Cloudsdale is where the weather is made. Without us, the rest of Equestria would starve, freeze down, drown, and generally not be a very happy place. That gives us a special honor, one that can't be tainted by incompetent fools like you. How could the world look up and trust if Pegasi like you are flying around wearing Cloudsdale name? No, we need to do something with all of you. And then we've got a delicious idea. One day over 1,000 years ago, those were some smart ponies back then. I'll say you don't find too many of them nowadays. But I digress, haha. Here, now, through these doors, quickly now, before more encouragement is supplied." Dr. Atmosphere opened a heavy-looking door in a cramped corridor and offered a hoof inside. Scootaloo stared up at him. He glanced at the suited pony. Scootaloo and the others walked inside as he laughed again. "Enjoy the rest of your pitiful life." And with that, he slammed the door closed. They all turned and they looked at the big room that they had been led to. It was fairly open and empty, almost like a feedier room. At one end of the room there were 6 square vats, each one with nearly full individual spectra. Above them was a peculiar-looking machine. From a central stack, 6 hoses broke off and led above each of the individual vats. At the top of the stack was the single opening, red with rust, despite it being the rest of the machine to be shiny and clean. Even further above was a fairly complex-looking object, with chains and gears hanging off from beams and pipes loosely. Running even higher than the whole machine was a length of scaffolding with the doors on either side leading out of the room. Down onto the floor, a small collection of defeated, crying ponies sat chatting quietly. "Those suits there, those are from the other flight school across town," Aurora informed, sounding shocked. "And those other ponies, sitting over there, see? I remember a trip we went on once with a Levitating Acres private school. I remember them from that trip." "So this is where all the failures go? Not deported, but forced to work forever?" Oren sobbed quietly. In exchange for helping someone, he had doomed himself and his good friend for a life to subterfuge. Scootaloo, though, reached for a reassuring wing over and lifted his chin. She smiled at him, understanding his depression. "At least we don't have to go through it alone," she cooed softly. Suddenly there was a commotion in the group of the ex-students. One pony from an unidentified school took off, headed towards one of the doors on the scaffolding. Immediately, 2 suited ponies launched at record speed and both clipped the flyaway with their tasers. The pony spasmed in the air, but then dropped like a stone, with an audible crack as he landed, and a violent burst of twitching. All the other ponies walked back, staring horrified at their friend. They watched hopefully for a long time, and he didn't move. Some cried softly, some others turned away, too far confused to feel any more emotions. "I guess that option's out," Aurora said to no one in particular. "But you can't fly right now anyways," Oren questioned. "That medic guy, Patches, or whatever he was called, he popped my wings back in the joints and bandaged up where my skin tore. I won't be winning any races, but I can fly again." They slowly walked forwards and joined the group of ponies, looking at each other with understanding sorrow. "Eyes front and center, you impted mules," one of the suited ponies shouted. After the previous display, no one challenged that order, and they stared like scaffolding just as one of the doors opened. Now you ask, are they up to the task? To which the answer is a simple facility. A few official-looking Pegasi walked in onto the scaffolding and turned to look down on the group with disgust. One of them stood into a small podium set up in the center and began speaking loudly and clearly. By now you've all clearly determined that you are not going to exile. There is no deportation. That's never was. You are in the factory, and you'll never leave the factory. And while you may be called useless, that's not entirely true. You're worthless to the flock as a pony, but you still have the purpose. Purpose to all the ponies for this land and far and wide. You get to help make us rainbows. Beautiful, magical rainbows. Doesn't that excite you? The mysterious announcer grinned ecstatically, taking in all the disgusted looks from every foal on the floor below him. I thought so, he chuckled. It's just as an honor, you know. It leaves every pony entrusted with the task speechless now. So, do we have any volunteers? Again, every pony below glared with hate. One brave pony, a light pink one from the Levitating Acres, walked forward a few steps and then yelled, "How could you ever get away with this? How could Celestia or even Luna know about this and tolerate it? It's slavery! It's torture! I think you'll find it more than that." A second pony official walked in out of the shadows and up to the podium. The pony was in a suit and masks. The first pony walked off the podium, allowed the second to talk. Scootaloo noticed that there was the rose-red-eyed pony from before. She watched more intently now. The voice was familiar. 1,000 years ago, when Celestia banished Luna from Equestria and sent her to her moon, she was charged with 3 weeks' tasks. Originally, she was in charge of raising the sun, showering the land with rainbows, but with the moon being an additional task, she handed down to the responsibility of rainbows. Celestia entrusted the Pegasi of Cloudsdale to make rainbows for her from now on. For the first dozen years, we are given the powerful unicorns to help create spectra. Spectra is pure pigment, pure color, everything full of spectra, but you can't just harvest it. You can never separate color from an object, so it's made to artificially with magic. The masked pony never took her eyes off the brave pink one. That is until your top engineers made a breakthrough. They discovered an ingenious way to extract pigment, and that is ever so beautiful, even a simple machine could do it. But it couldn't be done with anything, the conditions had to be right. And what did those horrible people do? The pink Pegasus screamed, growing angrier by the minute. The mysterious pony wiped off her mask, unveiling more of her rose-red eyes. Her skin was a light cyan, and her mane was as gorgeous rainbow. Several other fillies gasped. Scootaloo's knees weakened as it hit her. It was Rainbow Dash. Scootaloo's thoughts raced through her mind, and the room started spinning. It couldn't be. An evil twin, maybe? Perhaps some neglected sister? Rainbow Dash couldn't be this evil. She was her friend, her mentor, her only family, even if not by blood. How was it all she could think? It had to be live ponies. Only live ponies where magic and spectra runs freely together. Rainbow Dash threw her head back and laughed manically. Only then the spectra can be separated, and it's such a beautiful idea, such a wonderful, horrible idea. It works so well, we could create exponentially more rainbows of a better quality with real spectra, and finally gives us a way to prevent Cloudsdale from ever being tainted by all those horrible Pegasus who couldn't fly. Ha 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 ha! Scootaloo couldn't take it. While all the other ponies were exclaiming in disgust and fear, running and screaming for where they came in, backing off as suited ponies surrounded them and herded them back into the center of the floor. Scootaloo couldn't take it anymore. "I thought you loved me," she wailed, cutting Rainbow Dash's laughter short. "Huh?" She turned and noticed the amber-orange Pegasus. "I thought you loved me. How could you do this to me? I thought you cared for me. After all the help, all my life, you treated me like a little sister, and I treated you like my big sister. You were my big sister to me. You were the only family I ever had, and you knew it." Tears were pouring down from her face now. obscuring her vision again. Her throat hurt from the crying and shouting, but she couldn't stop. After everything, you're just going to let me die? I tried so hard for you. She stared at the floor for a moment. Everyone was silent. She looked straight at Rainbow Dash. Scootaloo looked up slowly, and while she couldn't see the sadness in her eyes, straight into those rosy eyes, past them, and deep into Rainbow Dash herself. I thought you loved me. Rainbow Dash returned the look. Her eyes revealed no emotion, no love, no care, only apathy. Slowly, however, they glared at Scootaloo. Pure seething hate erupted from Rainbow Dash's mouth, and she screamed in return. I did love you! I tried so hard for you, taught you everything I knew, in hopes you would pass the test, and you had it in you, kid. I knew it! I knew what they did there. Ever since I performed that sonic rainbow, and they approached me, they wanted to find more ways to make the spectrum. They thought as if I was capable of making rainbows, I could help them make its components. Well, they couldn't, but I learned a lot about this place. I'm the manager here now, you know? I've worked my way up, in secret pretending to be the only simple weather control. How do you think I could afford that massive house over Ponyville? How do you... She trailed, shaking her head, remembering her anger suddenly. I tried, all right. It was up to you to save yourself, and you couldn't just fail yourself. You didn't just fail Cloudsdale, you failed me, and that's the worst thing you could have done. You're just dead to Cloudsdale now. You're dead to me. The room tilted as Scootaloo tried to comprehend what she was told. Her mind broke as she was totally unable to focus on anything. She stumbled slightly until Orin opened a wing, and she clung into it for stability. Rainbow Dash noticed this and yelled with more fury. You can't have happiness. You ruined me, and I'll ruin you. Workers, the brown one. Here, him first. No! Scootaloo, Aurora, and Orin all jumped. Suited ponies cornered Orin, pushing the other two to the side. He tried to leap out of the way, tried to run, but one of the stallions spun around and kicked at him. The hoof connected to his shoulder, and Orin collapsed with a shout. Get back! More suits yelled at Aurora and Scootaloo as they dragged the whimpering Orin to the front of the room. The giant machine at the back started humming to life, and the assembly of chains lifted off the top and moved towards the floor. Everyone noticed they were in shackles now, and the suits clasped on Orin onto them. Braving up look, he turned to Scootaloo. Don't worry, Scoots. I love you. Goodbye. Goodbye, Orin. Scootaloo gasped. I love you too. With that, the chains pulled tight and lifted the brown Pegasus all the way up to the gears. The chains grew taut and stretched of Orin's limbs straight up and down. We find the machine works better where ribs are broken, Rainbow Dash explained apathetically. As the chains spun around in the opposite directions, twisting Orin, his screams almost covered the echoing pops and shattering noises. One or two jagged bones tore through his side, and his yells faded to a slow, quiet rattle of breath. The chains untwisted, and the shackles opened, dropping the shattered pony into the single opening. Scootaloo watched in horror, her brain overcome with what's happening, detached from all emotion. She noticed that at the top of the machine wasn't rusty. It was blood. Blood just like it was being tossed up from the mangled remains of Orin, and the rest of his body was swallowed up into the great machine, finishing with one lone hoof directed straight up, and then there was nothing left. As the hoses over the green and red vats of spectrum started spewing out their colors, Scootaloo's vision started to fade, and the last thing she noticed was Aurora's concerned, broken voice saying her name as Scootaloo flopped to her side. In the Rainbow Factory, where your fears and horrors come true. In the Rainbow Factory, where not a single soul gets through. Scootaloo, get up! Get up now! Hurry! Scootaloo, wake up! Scootaloo shook her head, briefly wondering where she was and what was happening. In a flash, it all came back. She jumped to her feet. Aurora was shaking her, and frightened casting her face. The suits were starting to approach the two now, tasers, shackles, and ready. Scootaloo, they're coming for us! What do we do? Scootaloo looked for an opening. All the doors were blocked except one, on the scaffolding. The suited ponies were slowly approaching, not rushing in order to prevent the fillies from freaking out. Fear was their tool. Scootaloo spun around, looking for an exit. There was only one, she realized. I have a plan, she whispered to Aurora. What's that? Clear, fly, and fall complete. Aurora nodded in understanding, her eyes widening. She repeated louder now, so the other frightened fillies could hear. Clear flight fall complete. Got it. 1, Scootaloo started counting. 2, Aurora squeaked as she backed into Scootaloo. The suits were a mere feet away from now. Free! A collective shout reverberated around the room as every filly that could actually fly took off. The suited ponies gasped and fell back, unsure of where to go. There was too much confusion. A few of the faster thinking ones that took off as well, tasers at the ready, aiming for the coolest Pegasus they could take. Step 1, Scootaloo screamed. Clear! With her command, the failures started targeting the dark ponies in droves. Hooves connected with the heads, and some of the students fell lifeless onto the floor. The majority of casualties were the suited ponies. Scootaloo and Aurora landed on the scaffolding, right by the door, and reached it open, and it was locked. Oh God, what do we do now? Aurora cried. We're still on the clear, she shouted. Turning around and bucking the door, Aurora followed, focusing the brunt of her blows on the part of the wall where the latch would be. Rainbow Dash was on the other side of the scaffolding, recovered from her initial shock from rebellion, and then Scootaloo pounded on the door. Kill her! She screamed at the other important-looking ponies. Kill her! She started to gallop towards the fillies, forgetting her wings momentarily. Scootaloo closed her eyes, pounding harder and harder on the door. It started to creak and splinter. Any second now, she thought. Rainbow Dash will get here. It's over, I'm doomed. She would have cried, but there were no more tears left. But nothing came. The door started to split from its frame, now leaning inward. It wouldn't be long until it was open. She opened her clenched eyes, peeking up from the scaffolding. All the remaining ponies were there, pressing together, holding the enraged blue Pegasus and her cronies back. They wouldn't last long, however, even as Scootaloo watched. Twitching and yelping ponies were falling onto the floor below, even some landing in the great maw of the Spectra machine. The pink pony from Levitating Acres was there, and she turned to Scootaloo and Aurora, just as the door blew it back in the hall behind. Fly! The pink pony demanded, with pain in her voice. She opened her mouth to speak again, but it was cut short with a pile of Pegasus blew apart. Rainbow Dash, standing enraged with the opening. She was on her 2 back hooves, her front 2 rolling in the air. A small gash down her side and streaked red and multicolored mane was torn in the patch. Unearthly howl passed her lips, and her rose eyes were drained off any sanity that was left. Come on, Aurora, Scootaloo pleaded as she spun around. We've got to fly if we're going to live. I can't. This is too much. I haven't healed. Aurora looked at Scootaloo with open, wide eyes. You go, Scootaloo. Tell everyone what happens here. Let them know. She glanced back at the wall of students, almost bare now as Rainbow Dash's blood loss tore them into pieces. Her blue coat was now glistening crimson, almost dripping as she ignored the need to live ponies. There would be more. Cloudsdale would take a small shortage of rainbows in a few months, and there would be more classes, more failures. But for now, all she knew was that Rainbow Scootaloo had to die, violently if possible. Decades of working with Rainbow Factory had fractured her, and she was the only one allowed in public. Keeping the horrible secret with her since childhood had only led her psychological problems that no amount of therapy could cure. Scootaloo was at her last link of sanity. Her only failure had deleted that. There was no logic in her mind anymore. No care, no capacity for compassion, only hate. Pure, concentrated, and evil that hated filled and gasped for her love, for Scootaloo had once occupied. Rainbow Dash was no more. Only this monster remained. I hardly knew you, Aurora, Scootaloo cooed softly into the yellow Pegasus beside her. I'm sorry. I never knew you until this. I'm sorry we had to meet like this, and I'm sorry for having to part like this. She sniffled, but she only found more tears. Any meeting of a friend is a welcome meeting, Aurora reassured Scootaloo. Now you heard the other pony, Scootaloo. Fly, goodbye. Goodbye, Aurora. With that, Scootaloo levitated and spun around and looked at the yellow pony's one last time and launched down the cramped corridor. She had no idea where she was going, and any chance freedom was the one route she had to take. Aurora blinked a couple times, standing in front of the door. Rainbow Dash would have at least had one obstacle in her way for Scootaloo, but the blue pony at last tossed the last of the students over the scaffolding and slowly walked towards Aurora. How cute! You think that you, a useless, broken pile of manure, could possibly stand in my way. You make me laugh. None of you can compete with the awesome power I have. Love can overcome evils in this world. Aurora strained herself in rebellion as Rainbow Dash stopped in front of her. Aurora stayed in front of Dash, barring her entry down the corridor beyond. Well then, bitch, let's see if love can overcome this one. And with that, Rainbow Dash grabbed one of Aurora's bandaged wings and pulled it, tearing it off completely. Aurora collapsed on her knees, grinding her teeth to the horrible pain, but she didn't scream. She wouldn't give it to Rainbow Dash. Rainbow grabbed her other wing and dragged her kicking and moaning down to the center of the scaffolding. She lifted Aurora up by the wing, laughing quietly to herself as a look of intense agony appeared on Aurora's face. Rainbow Dash took to the air, bringing the squirming yellow and green pony with her. Over top of the machine with the squeak of evil laughter, she jerked at the wing with her hoof it too, disconnected from now the convulsing Pegasus, and Aurora fell. She landed head first on the door on the scaffolding, folding closed with a gust of wind. That was just the machine was pumping out the brightest greens and yellows it had ever produced, and there was no one around to see it. Scootaloo glanced backwards momentarily too, her heart pounding. The noise of constant bump, 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 bump drowned out any other sound in her head. Her ears throbbing along with it. The corridor was just like the other one that led to the feeder room, cramped with dozens of objects jutting out random intervals. Straight behind her, maybe 500 meters now, a bloody mare that used to be Rainbow Dash was now cruising along herself. Both Pegasi were completely straight, hooves forward, wings beating at the impossible count, one trying to escape, the other one to rupture. Scootaloo looked forward again, focusing on what lay ahead of her. That's all that matters, she thought. That's what's ahead of me. There's no changing what's behind me. She had to ignore it, focused, for most of the second time as many days. The flood of instinct overtook Scootaloo, despite the terror she felt in her body, the sorrow that had surrounded her, and the evil behind her. Her worries melted away at the thought of living and flying encased her every being. Down under wires and pipes she ducked, and around various workers with complaints and shouts were ignored, only to be repeated momentarily as the raging pony behind collided with them. Her body, by doing the flying, Scootaloo's thoughts returned to the escape opportunities. As she whipped around on the sharp corners at impossible speeds, zipped up and down a countless sets of stairs, trying to shake her murderous tail, but to no avail. She contemplated every nook and cranny she passed, briefly considering hiding. She struck that deal of her own. As insane as Rainbow Dash might be, she was still too smart to overlook any possible spot Scootaloo might be. But there ahead of her, Scootaloo found a solution. A garbage vent of some kind. It was sticking out from the wall of the floor below. Momentarily she gave thought to where it might lead, whether out of the factory or in some incinerator she couldn't tell, but it was probably worth the risk. She snuck one at the last glance behind her just to make sure the unstable mare was far away enough. Rainbow Dash was paying no attention to the hazards she sought to her prey, tearing through the electrical wires and ratcheting off heated pipes, going through any obstacle rather than turn around to save in time. But the collisions had slowed her down enough for Scootaloo to a chance. She slammed a sudden halt over the vent, hoping for her life. "Fall," she muttered, closing her eyes and around her wings, resisting the urge to start flapping immediately. She counted silently to herself as shadows brushed past her closed eyes, hoping for the best for where the vent led. 1, 2, 3. She opened her eyes and her wings and looked up, hovering. Rainbow Dash was above, looking down into the vent. Her eyes were bulgy and twitched. Her hooves pounded on the edge of the vent as she was too large to follow. The filly having barely made it in herself, but then again the anger in her face vanished, only to be replaced with a malicious grin. She started laughing again, the cackle echoing in down the vent and reverberating in Scootaloo's mind. "You moron! You never did have a good sense of direction," she teased, laughing again. Scootaloo finally looked down, getting her bearings. "Oh no," she squealed. She was in the feeder room again. Only by now it was full of suited ponies, circling her. Their masked faces seemed to be grinning at her as Rainbow Dash shouted orders from the vent. "Don't let her die. I must do it. I subdued her. Catch her." She whined a glorious victory as Suits shocked Scootaloo with the taser, and her limp body began to fall from the air, caught her, and brought her to the floor. Scootaloo blacked out momentarily as electricity passed through her, but she came to a lying on the cold cloud floor, metal shackles preventing her from moving. She struggled to get free. She could hardly shake. The chains lifted her slightly, bringing her small body to eye with the Pegasus in front of her. The pony was a deep blood red, glistening the artificial light of the factory. Her mane had small spots of glorious colors of rainbow, but that was momentarily the same red color as her coat of fur. Chunkins of her skin were missing from small spots, and her hair was ripped in some places, bald patches and skin in others. The only cure Scootaloo had, who used to be, were white roses, irises focused on her. "Any final words, you miserable, worthless, bitch of a fool?" Scootaloo brought her chin high, still demanding the tiniest fraction of dignity. "You have beautiful eyes," she cooed soft, yet clearly.
What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, please stay pretty.